You were a Blackhawk pilot, now the CEO of a very nicely sized organization.
And at that time, I didn't know we were going to go to war. I was flying helicopters, but my entire unit came with us, and they rode in the back of trucks and Humvees with tarp covering them. If they were to be shot at, there was no hope other than their body armor. From the get-go, this was about those soldiers. What could we do to impact them? I started the business in July, and I found out I had melanoma, so I had cancer. And my son was in such bad shape. He was quadriplegic. We basically had an ICU in our living room. About a year later, I was like, I could go back to this. And the next year we did like 100,000. Like we just started. I received payment for my first $1 million invoice to government. Was when I was like, oh, this is legit now.
All right, welcome to our latest edition of the BLTNT podcast. I'm sitting here with Katie Bigelow of Mettle Ops, and very excited to have you here, Katie.
Thank you for inviting me.
You're welcome. So this one is going to be bootstrapped to battlefield, scaling with purpose in defense tech. That's some of it, but there's a lot of great personal stuff going on in here. So you were a Blackhawk pilot, now the CEO of a very nicely sized organization, multiple locations throughout Michigan and a new one in Huntsville, Alabama, right?
Yes.
Your story has so much grit in it. Obviously, you and I don't know each other that well, which is kind of fun to be doing this because I'm going to get to learn about you just at the same time that everybody else is that's watching this. And so, but the pieces that we've talked about thus far is just so remarkable. You know, what you've kind of just plowed through and just made it happen.
It's funny. It doesn't feel remarkable. It feels like just normal life.
Well, you've got a remarkable normal life then. Solopreneur. You started this thing on your own, or you and your husband, essentially, right?
It was really me on my own. He was working for another company, and the intention was for it just to be a side gig while the kids were napping. That was the plan.
Okay. And now up to 65 employees at Mettle Ops?
Including my husband.
Okay,
yes.
good. Is he a good employee?
I always say he never does anything I tell him to. But no, he's a. We have a handful of people that have been there from almost the very beginning, and it is really the team that has brought us to where we are right now. There's not one person on that team, me included, that could have done what we've done single-handedly. It's all of us working together with our unique skill sets.
Well, I can't wait for you to tell everybody what it is that you do and how you got there. Where do you want to get started?
We can start with why I started the business, and maybe that'll end up popping back.
That'd be great.
To all kinds of things. But I'd been in the Army for 10 years. I started out as an enlisted linguist, and then I went into aviation.
What was your language?
Arabic. I was an Arabic speaker. I only did that for a few years, and actually I deployed to Bosnia as an Arabic speaker, which felt pretty meaningless because there's not too many Arabic speakers in Bosnia. Anyway, so I applied. I heard about going to flight school, so I just thought, oh, that sounds like fun. I think I'll apply for that. And so then I spent the last 7 years of my career as an Army aviator. And so I was a Blackhawk pilot. And at that time, I didn't know we were going to go to war. And so I was a medevac pilot in Colorado when we went to war in 2003. And so I spent 2 full years there.
Wow.
And then...
How old were you at the time?
In 2003, I'll have to do math, 26.
And I'm not trying to figure out your age. I'm just curious for the story.
No, I don't mind. It was funny too because the culture is so different there. I used to, we're going to pop into war stories. I hope it's okay. But our flight surgeon was a woman. So we used to do women's and children's clinics in town. And so I would go into town with her and translate, when I wasn't flying. And the women would always ask me, if I was married and had kids. And I always tell them, no, not married, I don't have kids. And they were all so sad for me. It was just a big cultural difference.
If they only could see you now with your 8 kids.
Yeah, we made up for that now. So I spent 10 years in, and we realized that if I wanted to have a family, I needed to get out. I had seen a lot of women deploy and have to leave their kids behind, and I decided that wasn't a life choice for us. Even though I felt like a lot of meaning in deployment scenarios, and I really liked doing it. It wasn't good long term. So we decided that I was going to be a stay-at-home mom. I had a lot of aspirations. It didn't stick. but it was pretty tough because I got out of multiple combat tours. I got out, and now I'm a stay-at-home mom. I end up having a special needs son as my second son. And so between the trauma around that and the trauma around combat, I was dealing with a lot of emotional stuff. We had moved to Michigan. Michigan does not have a large military presence, but I had been in the military for 10 years. I grew up in the military. And so then to move to Michigan and have none of the community that I had been used to was also a big adjustment for me. And my husband had been an artillery officer, and he was transferring to the acquisition corps. And so that was what's
the acquisition corps all about?
Acquisition corps is is officers who buy for the government, essentially. It's usually not something they start out with. Usually they come from some other branch. And so my husband had been artillery branch and had combat experience there also. But this was more like what long-term would serve our family, and acquisitions would be something that would give him a skill set for him once he retired to take care of our family.
Got it.
And so he transitioned. He went through all the training. He was now in acquisitions. And so I had very little friends having moved here. And so he'd come home every day and tell me all about his day at work. And we realized after a couple of years of that I was getting a whole education in government acquisitions. I remember him coming home and telling me about they had contracted a company to reset the BII on Paladin, on a bunch of Paladins. And I was thinking, I bet you a lot of people don't know what that is.
Yeah, I still don't. You told me the other day, but I still don't remember.
Yeah. And it probably doesn't matter that much, except that I ended up building a whole mental business plan around it. And, because I was at home with little kids, and after a while, I was like, I could do something like that. I could run a business that does that. And
what was that? So explain that.
Reset the BII on Paladins.
Yep.
Okay, so all military vehicles have a set of basic tools.
Okay.
And they're usually in a cage, like underneath or in the back somewhere. And so those cages get damaged, tools go missing, things like that. So if you're going to reset that, you would want to take an inventory, replace the tools, have a welder come in and fix those cages. And then if you're handling military equipment, obviously there's some security involved and some ability around understanding the equipment. Pretty simple business plan, So
like the repair kit in your car, but on steroids.
But on steroids, exactly. So that was kind of my vision. I don't know if I had mentioned in the past, but the one thing I did do to make money while I was a stay-at-home wife was I wrote resumes for people.
Oh,
so
okay.
I always had a little side gig. And so that was this was going to be just like that on steroids was the plan. And but that wasn't really going to work because I had a special needs son. I had lots of children. I didn't have all of my children at that time. And then my husband was still active duty, so I couldn't really work in that world. That would be pretty conflicting. I know
Sure.
it's possible, but we just didn't really consider it. But you fast forward a couple years, and my husband was working in industry, and he had to retire because our son was very fragile, and he couldn't move. And so the Army said, you have to retire or you have to move. And Brett would not have survived a move. So
And Brett was your
my son. Yeah. And then so my husband retired, and he got a job in industry. And then he just came home one day and said, that business you always talked about, I think you should do it. And that was it. It was never something he was going to do with me. It was going to be the side gig. And then, and I didn't know how I was going to do it. I had a special needs son who was very involved. It wasn't, there's a pretty big spectrum of special needs children. And mine
Sure.
was on the end where he was quadriplegic. He needed oxygen and a ventilator, and very, very involved. And so that just managing that care 24 hours a day, we basically had an ICU in our living room. And so I didn't even know how it'd be possible. But, while I was having my sandwich, for lunch, I made their business cards. The logo we use today, I made on Word at the kitchen computer.
Nice.
And so I just started putting those things together. Back then, Michigan, like the MEDC, had a really nice little kind of an assist to help you, like what you need to do first, second, and third to start a business. So I just walked through that checklist and started the business.
Because you didn't have anybody around you to advise you on this or anything like that.
And I had no money for like an attorney to do it. And now I don't recommend people get an attorney to do it unless it's really complex, because it's pretty basic and simple to just set a business. And I had I think I had a little bit, I had a little bit of intuition about it that, I knew that I needed to do money producing activities first. And this is always my advice for any entrepreneur. Like, who cares about networking? You need to make money. Otherwise, you don't have a business. You're just networking.
I always say you got to get to $1. Show me that this place can bring $1 in.
Well, it's always been my filter on what I do today. So I have to work on my advertising and I have to send out an invoice. Which one is the money producing activity? Sending out the invoice happens first. The other one's obviously important, or delivering for a customer or any of those things are far more important than making sure the housekeeping is cleaning the floor. All are important, but one is necessary in order to have a business. And so that was kind of how I did it. But that was 2013. It was interesting because it was July of 2013. We just talked a little bit about, that was the same month I found out, or I had maybe a couple months difference. I found out I had melanoma, so I had cancer. And and my son was in such bad shape. I didn't ever tell anybody other than my family until later that I had cancer, because I thought life couldn't get any worse than it was,
Sure.
So I was dealing with that, and then but I just had this little side hobby at that point. And I was pre-revenue for a long time. And then
were you the only expense that the business had? I mean,
yeah, and I was no expense. I didn't pay myself or anything. So we didn't have any money to pay me anyway. So, and the stuff I was doing, it does cost a little bit money to set up a business with the state. You have the filing fee or whatever, but they let veterans file for free. So I take advantage of that even now. And so I did all those little housekeeping things. And then my son's health got progressively worse. So I started the business in July, but by September, we ended up choosing hospice for our son, and he was in such bad shape. And he passed away in November. And so at that point, I did nothing business-wise for quite a long time. And then I don't know, about a year later, I was like, I could go back to this. I went through a lot because my identity had changed. I was a special needs mom, and now I wasn't. My days were filled with caring for a very fragile child, and now they weren't. And it was a big change for me. And I had another baby, so that was a lot. But I won my first contract in fall of 2015 with the Air Force, Tinker Air Force Base.
Okay, and what was the contract for?
It was distributing STEM funds for a scholarship program they had. It was just like an administrative program.
Okay.
And what's interesting is I needed a loan. Like I had to front the $75,000 to do the loan. And the bank, I worked out a whole deal with a local bank. They were going to loan me the money. And then when I got the contract and I brought it to the bank, they said, "Oh, no, we're not going to do that." So all of a sudden I had a problem. I needed $75,000, which we didn't have. And I had to do this contract, and I had like 30 days to execute it. And so I called my mother-in-law. So I did take funding at one point.
Okay.
My mother-in-law loaned me the money. I paid it back in 30 days with interest. But that's how I got started.
Wow.
And so I always try to give her credit for that, because she didn't have to do that. And that was really generous of her I think she emptied all of her CDs kind of thing for me.
Something tells me, though, that regardless of if she would have stepped up, you would have...
Oh, I would have figured.
You would have figured it out.
Yeah, I don't know at the time if I knew I would have done that, but I know now enough about my character to know that I would have figured it out. But I probably made like $1,200 on that contract. I made nothing. I basically bought the contract. Yep. But it was the idea of getting my foot in the door, getting some past performance, learning, and so that was really valuable. And then after that, we just kind of kept hustling, and And
were you just essentially answering government RFPs and saying, going through all of them, sifting through all of them, and saying, "I think I could do that. I think I could do that."
I was proposing and learning the proposal process is a lot. Their RFPs are often 60 pages, so even just reading it is a lot, and understanding what to read.
And you didn't have your friend ChatGPT.
I didn't have AI. I did have. It's called Apex Accelerator now, but I had that. I was in a county that had a really great one, so I took all the classes that they had to offer. I was looking at the notes the other day, and I could teach those classes now. But I basically did everything they said to do. Register here, get this, go here, introduce yourself to this, and I just went and did it all. And then the other model we used was consulting in defense work is very, very expensive. A good defense consultant, which we have several now, they're unaffordable for small business.
Okay.
And so, especially small business wants to break into defense. So I was basically a very low wage consultant for companies, and I would go through these RFPs and propose for them for a low wage, and they could afford to try to get their foot in the door, and I got to learn.
So it was a win-win there.
Yeah. And
did they know that you were kind of green to this?
Oh yeah, they knew. That's why I could charge very little.
Okay.
They knew, and I really hustled hard. I think that was part of the benefit to them too. Is like I didn't know, and they knew I didn't know, so I had to figure it out.
And where did you find those people?
My husband had known a lot of people in the industry and a lot of people that wanted to get somewhere but didn't know how, and he had kind of said, "Hey, you should meet my wife. She'd be interested in trying to figure out this out with you."
Mm-hmm.
And so we just kind of worked kind of as partners. I did like 1099 work for them. But while I registered for them for something, I'd register myself for something. And I even hired a couple consultants then to help me so that we were doing a really good job in introducing these companies to everybody we could figure out.
Sure.
And then eventually I had more work that I could do by myself. So my husband quit his job and came and worked with me. And so we've been working side by side now since 2016.
Wow.
And yeah. And so then we hired our third employee was a recent high school graduate who was going to college for HR, and she needed a job, and she still works with us. She's now our chief of staff. She's been there for everything we've won and lost in like the last 8 years.
Fantastic.
So I realized a while ago that when I wasn't available, people were going to her for all their questions because she was there with us when we did it. And so she's been with us for a long time.
And what's her name?
Her name is Danielle. Her new name is Danielle Sansoteras. She just got married this weekend.
Congratulations,
Very
Danielle.
exciting. So
fantastic. So you also told me a story though, even pre college, right? That you've had this grit to you, right? To kind of just make it happen. You told me that your family motto, never give up.
Yeah, that's my husband and I with my kids. That's post college probably.
Okay. But that's been an undercurrent though for quite some time. So I remember even going to college, that's why you enlisted?
Oh yeah, because I needed college money. Yeah, I was living on my own, trying to pay for community college. I was going to community college at night, and I got a job as an administrative assistant at an engineering firm, which I think is so cool because now I own an engineering firm. I don't know if publicly I should admit, but I lied about my age and my computer skills to get that job. And then
I think the statute of limitations has run out. Yeah,
Plus, I know I did a good job for them, so I feel like it's okay. But when I did the interview, she said, "Okay, I want you to come back tomorrow and show me your computer skills, and then we'll decide if we're going to hire you." So I went home and I got a textbook for WordPerfect. That really dates me right there. You probably figure it out. And I did all the tutorials. I spent like the whole night doing all the tutorials, and then the next day I wowed her and got the job.
Wow.
And so I worked there for a year, but I was really struggling. I had just enough money, and just enough money is not enough money to live on your own.
No.
And I lived in Colorado, and somebody broke into my car and broke I had to pay the deductible. It was too cold not to. And so then I didn't have enough money anymore. And so when the recruiter came around and said, "Hey, we'll give you money for college," I knew what that meant. I knew it meant a lot more than just get some money.
Sure.
But at that point, I realized I could do anything for 4 years. 4 years isn't that long. So I enlisted, and that's how I ended up there. And I ended up, the Army did pay for my associates in foreign language. They paid for my bachelor's in aeronautics, and then they paid for my MBA. So
I have to venture to guess that you would recommend this if someone's out there in your family or with the family of somebody listening to this or someone themselves watching that. Would you recommend enlisting? To the right person, or
yeah,
what would you tell your?
In years past, I would say hard no, but I'm starting to realize that we have to go on our own journeys and have our own hardships, because I think my hard no would have been about preventing hardship for them, and now I'm understanding, and even as I look at my own kids, is like those hard moments are what shape us, and so would I recommend it? Kinda. I mean, you really face who you are in that situation. We're really young by today's standards when you leave home for the military at like 18 and 19. And you're really not allowed to be a child anymore. And I think that's pretty hard for a lot of people, but it's probably pretty good for us culturally for children to start becoming adults at 18, 19.
Yeah.
And so I think that I do recommend it. All these people like, oh, I don't have enough money to go to college. Well, if you're a healthy bodied adult, there's a way to figure it out. And some of us did it, you know? So I've heard a lot of people, wow, you know, I can't work and go to college at the same time. Well, okay, it did take me a while to finish college, but I did work and go to college at the same time, and it worked out fine.
So did I.
Yeah.
So did I. I had to do it too, but I did not put in the time in the military like you. So thank you for that service.
Well,
for sure.
Thank you. Yeah.
I've noticed also there's been some common names, some folks that we know together that also served, and just your face lights up. There's a camaraderie. There's a bond that you just don't get to experience in many other ways, right? So
right. There's a lot of it shapes you. It shapes your ability to communicate with people. It thickens your skin, which I think most young people today, or even at my day and age, weren't necessarily accused of being tough. And so it was a good thing to toughen up and help prepare you for things that are going to happen in life. But yeah, there is a camaraderie, and there's a level of automatic trust, I think, and connection that comes from having served with somebody else. And then it's especially fun when you find out your paths crossed.
Sure.
And that doesn't happen all the time, but sometimes it does. You know?
So how do you think that that's played into your personal relationship with your husband, right? With the fact that you both served, be able to understand each other better.
My husband speaks Army, and so I constantly am. I interpret for everyone around.
And your husband has a name. We could just call him Mark from now on.
Mark speaks Army.
Okay.
Yes. Behavior, I think that's very normal to us that might not.
When you
be
talk about
else.
BIIs, he knows what you're talking about.
He knows what I'm talking about. And sometimes we still have to ask, but understanding what he's been through too, because he was a commander in combat too. I commanded aircraft is different, but that's a big deal. And so when I hear somebody diminish his military time, I feel pretty defensive over it.
How does somebody diminish it? What does that sound like?
Well, you know what? I don't. Some of it is, I see this kid just joined the military, and so this young kid must be tough soldier, and not. We see this. Okay, here's my example. If you want to get a military discount somewhere, you have to be active duty. Well, my husband served 23 years, and he served in combat multiple times, and he doesn't qualify for a military discount, where the kid that just got out of basic training 4 weeks ago does. That's very rude. Yeah,
and for the layman that didn't even resonate to me that's or that didn't hit me before you just said this, that's something that happens
all the time.
I just assumed that everybody who was ever in the military qualifies.
And I'm not retired, so I don't qualify for hardly anything. Not that I need to, I can don't need the discount, but it's more the it doesn't count, or you must not have really seen combat, you were a girl. Those kind of things are a little frustrating, and I think people just don't know, and they don't know how personal it is for us that have been through the hardship to feel like it's discounted a little.
So my friend David Sokol, and Mark, actually flew in the same helicopters together, correct?
No.
Oh no! Oh, I thought it was that close. It's not that close.
Oh no, that close. But I can't remember what his branch was, but he was Mark's lieutenant in Desert Storm.
Oh,
so
okay.
In '91 when Iraq invaded Kuwait, and we went in and liberated Kuwait. Dave was Mark's boss.
Well, Dave's going to be on here soon, so he can tell us all about what it was like.
He can tell stories of how if my husband was goofy or not. My husband was a forward observer then, so he was an enlisted soldier back then, and so it was a long time ago.
Wow, that was a small world.
I like to tease them both because I was in the 8th grade when that happened.
Love it. So you got this company going. When did you said that you were pre-revenue for a couple of years. When did it really start to take lift?
I think my first year we did like 75,000. The next year we did like 100,000, and then the next year we did like $1 million. Like we just started. We've had quite a few real big years. I always say, like, when someone asks me, well, when would you think this was like really a thing? Is when I received payment for my first $1 million invoice to the government. Was when I was like, oh, this is legit now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
What a great feeling.
Yeah. And even now, sometimes I feel, businesses run in all kinds of sizes. It counts if you are a one person charging somebody to do something, as well as Coca-Cola,
Sure.
They're all business one way or another. So there's a big spectrum, and you feel like a small player in a big field, depending on who you're running with in the moment.
Yeah.
Or you're the big player in the room. And
I have such respect, though. I just wrote this in a newsletter recently about my respect for solopreneurs, right? I always say, like, the premise of it was that I had been really busy for kind of a 3-week stretch of just meetings, things like that. And I just did not feel like I was looking at this thing, answering emails appropriately, that I just was kind of falling behind on some of my daily discipline type of tasks. And I thought, man, I'm very blessed that I have a company of people behind me that take care of so many different things. Right. And the solopreneur, they don't get to phone it in.
No,
I mean,
they can only do as much as they can physically handle.
Yeah. So if they're out selling, they can't deliver. If they're out delivering, they can't sell.
Yeah.
And if they're doing the back office work, they can't do either of those things. And it blows my mind that when people take on those tasks and stay at that, in that format of, a 1 or 2 or 3 person business versus growing it. Because in some ways, yes, the responsibilities get harder and more challenging and payrolls get bigger and things like that. But there's lift that starts to occur where others can take on certain roles.
Oh yeah. Momentum too, right? There's just so much happening at once now compared to when there was 2 of us.
Sure.
So yeah, you're right. And a lot of things I'm pleasantly surprised happened. Oh, I was going to get to that, and somebody took care of it.
Yeah, right.
And you're right. I think it's easier. Now I know some solopreneurs that think what they do is easier, and I think
they're far more organized than I am, though.
Yeah. So the growth is a big part of our future and our plans. So that's definitely, I'm not all that interested in staying small. I don't want to, I'm not trying to be a money grubber and grow at all costs or anything, but, our mission is really important to us. And the bigger we grow, the more people we can serve. And, we're pretty passionate about growing.
Yeah. So let's talk about mission. So I know you've used terminology with me of warfighter first. Are there any other mottos or things like that kind of drive or can you articulate that vision and what the culture's like and why this is all so important?
Our tagline is warfighters serving warfighters. And originally that was what I made in my kitchen on the computer, where it was me trying to serve other warfighters. When I went into Iraq, we were entering in, the war had already started. We were coming up from Kuwait up into Iraq. I was flying helicopters, but my entire unit came with us. So this is an entire support unit. And they rode in the back of trucks and Humvees with tarp covering them. They had no armor.
Wow. And
so if they were to be shot at, there was nothing, no hope other than their body armor. And so when we're looking at,
what did body armor consist of at the time?
We had those Kevlar plates and so, you kind of have to hit dead center for that to be useful.
I was going to say, yeah. What happens if he shoots you somewhere else, right?
Yeah. An IED, body armor is nothing for, so it from the get-go, this was about those soldiers. What could we do to impact them? And now it's become like the filter for how we make decisions. Profitability is necessary. No business can be successful without it. But if we take a hit to the profit, but we focus on the warfighter, can we do that? And almost always we can. We had some problems with some quality stuff going out, and somebody made the misguided comment, hey, the soldier could probably just solve the problem in the field. And the question is, should the soldier have to solve the problem in the field? There are a lot of companies out there that absolutely believe that and do not care. And we have examples of that from when we were soldiers in the field. But it's not going to be us. the stuff that the soldiers are holding that Mettle Ops makes is going to be because we scrutinized it with every ounce of our capability in order to make sure it was the best thing that we could get for them, even if it means making a little bit less money.
Can you talk about what some of those things are?
I mean, the one example was this bolt doesn't fit right because of the way the hole is. So they're just going to have to find a bigger bolt in the field. Well, I don't know if you've been in Iraq, but bolts are not plentiful and you can't run to the hardware store, And so sometimes it's stuff like that, but sometimes it's like, wow, there's a little crack in here. Maybe nobody will notice, and that we have never sent anything out like that. But I know people do it.
Mm-hmm.
My husband, he tells a story, and I won't name the company, but there was a contractor in the field that was doing software upgrades for their equipment, and Mark put it in, and it was not working at all. And the contractor said, hey, try this. And so Mark he loaded the new software, and it worked, and the guy said, okay, now take it off. He says, the government didn't pay for this. You can't have it. He's like, this is your first lesson in government acquisitions. If it's not in the requirements, we're not delivering it.
Whoa.
And we would just never do that. We would talk to the customer about, hey, we got to do this because this is what if that guy who said that or that company did that? What if that was their son out there?
Sure.
Or their daughter? They're not thinking like that at all.
It's interesting. I mean, so our daughter worked for a restaurant, and the owner of this restaurant had a lot of college age kids that worked there, and they would work their way through college there. And he always taught them, what we're never going to say here is we don't have a button for that. If you know the ingredient is back there, just say yes, right? Or if somebody says, hey, we don't have a half a sandwich and a cup of soup on the menu, but we have sandwiches and we have soup on the menu, cut the sandwich in half. One of you guys will eat it. Sell them the half a sandwich and the cup of soup. Just, if you can do it, move forward. And so think of the benign nature of that in here stateside, right? Versus the warfighter and the impact on them. So we got somebody teaching kids the right way here on something so innocuous like a sandwich. Mm-hmm. And then we have somebody who has software for our military and he won't provide it.
Right. Because the government wasn't paying
even
for
though
it.
He has it.
And it's a good lesson because the government should pay for it, and they should get contractor feedback in order to get the right requirements and stuff. And so there's more breakdowns than just that one breakdown.
Sure.
But, what can we do to prevent them all? Can we keep open and honest communication with the customer? Hey, this isn't working. Hey, we got to address this issue. Those kind of things. It's a big part of our conversation every single day. We have a very different model only because we didn't know any better. During COVID, we didn't have supply chain problems, and I didn't really know why. Like, we always ordered everything delivered. It was fine. And I finally started asking suppliers, why is everyone else complaining about supply chain problems and not us? And they said, because you always pay on time, always. So we're delivering to you first. And I was like, oh, do other companies not pay on time? That's a thing? I didn't know that was a thing. Mm-hmm. I thought that you agreed to terms and then you followed through with those terms.
Yeah.
So just that level of integrity probably saved our business in a way we had no idea would be a concern when COVID hit.
Goes back to just doing the right thing. I mean, it's funny. Yeah. I had a customer who we don't have anymore, luckily. And he and his partner would literally sit in their office and decide who they're going to pay when, even though they had the money. But it was just a part of their course of business was who can we stretch out.
I think a lot of companies like that. And I do get it. Like if they're like during COVID, if you have to, this company needs a little bit for their payroll and this one needs a little for their payroll.
Big difference.
Yeah. But if they have the money, it's just sitting in your account. So we have that problem. We have some customers. Sometimes we do some subprime work and they just hold the money that they billed the government from us because they got to get their interest on the money sitting in the account.
Wild.
So, I would like, for as long as humanly possible, to not be that company. Yeah. And I hope that.
Well, and luckily for you, I mean, it's actually paid dividends. Not that that's what you were looking for, but when you had the supply chain that was undisrupted, it paid dividends there for you.
Yeah.
I've been hearing a lot lately about the knock. When an employee knocks on your office door and says, "Got a minute?" and you immediately know it's some sort of IT incident. But Oxium IT can help. Whether you're having a problem, need consulting, an upgrade, or a managed IT approach, they focus on preventing cyber attacks and proactive solutions that deliver results. My friend Matt Loria and everyone at Oxium are ready to help before or after you get the knock. Visit Oxium.com and let Oxium IT help you outsmart chaos.
So, tell us what you're working on right now. You had used some terminology, Army Reactive Armor Tiles. Okay,
Yeah.
It's a tongue twister for me.
Okay.
What's
So
that
we're
all
the
about?
Army's OEM for reactive armor tiles.
Okay.
Reactive armor tiles are a post-production kitting package that get hung on the outside of heavy combat vehicles. And it's a passive protection against incoming rounds. Like whether a rocket or a missile is incoming, it's covered. You can see commercial pictures online of what it looks like, but the vehicle is covered in these basically boxes that are full of explosives, and they're engineered in a way that when it's penetrated, it'll blow back at the explosive in the hopes that it protects the occupants of the vehicle.
Wow.
So we have a large production contract where we do that work, and we hope to continue that work for many years to come.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. What are some of the other things? I know drones has been a big piece of your
Drones,
business.
yes. It was really interesting. I saw a briefing a couple years ago, and the topic of the briefing was how drones are changing the face of the battlefield. We look at the Azerbaijani Armenian war. We look at Ukraine and Russia and Israel. Drones are completely changing how warfare is done compared to when I was in wartime scenarios. And so we realized real quickly that we needed to figure this out, because all the drones that you could get mostly commercially was all sourced from countries that we wouldn't want involved in building our defense products. And so motors in particular were one of the big issues. And so we have several drone offerings, but we also have multiple sizes in motors that are U.S. made. So there's no funny business going on. We're making them here, and then we're able to supply them. We can supply them commercially, but we also go and supply them to the U.S. government.
Great. And commercially, you're actually working on that as well. So another line of business or same company? How does that work to split?
We have a separate company called Celestis, and it is just a spin-off of Mettle Ops. So the employees are paid at this time by Mettle Ops, but we are building drones and moving towards large production volumes for customers. And so we can white label, we'll have our own marketplace, and then the government setting up their own marketplaces. So we'll be participating in that also.
Explain to me that how the government would leverage a marketplace for drones.
So they are actually setting up their own version of Amazon, essentially, where these approved drones can be bought by government customers. You know, the government's a large organization, so organizations within the government can shop on this approved list marketplace for whatever they need. And so getting on that marketplace is going to be one of our chief goals.
And not every drone, just because we're talking military drones here, not every drone is something that fires a projectile. Correct.
In fact, most drones don't fire
do a lot
projectiles.
of other. They do a lot of other things. Right?
Yeah. I mean, they allow for optics and camera. They allow for a tank can hide a much. If they need a line of sight on something, the whole tank can hide behind a field and have their drone just pop up, take a look at what's going on, and no human life then is at risk by exposure. So there's a lot of scenarios where it's not just a dangerous projectile. But early warning, I think, is one of the big things. I think decoy is another opportunity where bad guys don't really know what's coming because it's just a drone putting out a really big signal. So it's interesting too, because it's as much as you can think of right now. Drones are so new. I don't think we've gotten anywhere near ideating everything that it can do. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for young and inventive minds to think of how we could leverage these better.
Plus, we can then leverage all the hand-eye coordination of the great gamers that we have. Here.
I know. That's what I said. All the controllers need to look like Xbox controllers, and then they've been training since they were 10.
Yeah, great. How do you feel like our enemies, especially the known enemies, are doing with keeping up with the technologies that we have versus or us versus keeping up with them?
I think between AI and cybersecurity, there's nothing that we have that they don't know about. And I think that's a major, major concern. a long time ago that the other thing is seeing the bad, who is the bad guy. It's very hard to tell.
Sure.
In Iraq, most of the people we saw on the streets were not bad guys. And it was very, very hard to see, figure that out. So I think that there's some real concerns about, the military superiority that we used to enjoy. I don't know that the gap is as wide as it used to be.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that that's something that we need to not forget about, and I think that there's countries that are motivated to ideate and grow tech more rapidly than we are. Look at how fast Ukraine is making changes all the time.
Mm-hmm.
It is mind-blowing. And I think, too, we get very, very hung up on this person is our enemy, so this person is our friend. And I think that we need to be cautious against all of that thinking. I don't think it's inherent in our culture that we assume one's the bad guy, so the other's the good guy. And I think we have to be mindful that we are all serving our own best interests. And so I think that hopefully some of the cybersecurity awareness that the government's putting out really matters. But I think that there's been really big gaps for a really long time, and it's very easy to figure out what we're doing and how we're doing it.
Yeah, we've seen that on the cybersecurity side for years. How many different times the government has said, we're going to enforce NIST, or we're going to enforce this.
CMMC.
And, we just haven't seen it truly come through. Now, CMMC seems to be on its way, but
Yep.
How people actually follow through with it, time will tell here. But where would you say that we as business leaders, where should we be having our heads? What should we be thinking about with kind of the knowledge that you just said, right? Kind of the not sure who to trust. We're operating our self-interest from a nation state perspective, and the bad guys, or at least the known enemies are doing pretty well with technology.
So the question is like, what should defense companies be doing? Or all
I would
companies?
say, so our audience is generally middle market business leaders.
Right.
Okay. Not necessarily just defense. Obviously in our region here in Detroit, Michigan, where we're headquartered, obviously we have a lot of manufacturing, which leads to some defense work.
Right.
But generally,
I think it's really worth keeping in mind that whatever reliance we have on industry outside of the U.S. Could be at risk at any time. And if a person's company primarily relies on work outside the U.S., it would be really wise to have some backup plans. Because we just don't. We saw this happen in COVID. If you're shipping into the U.S., it might be almost impossible at some point, and we can't predict those things.
sure.
So I'm really big on risk mitigation. I'm also really big on cybersecurity. I think that, I don't know you probably know the stats, but companies that get hacked, their chances of going out of business are insane. They are basically going out of business.
Yeah. One of the other challenges with that is that once they've been hacked once, they become a target for repeated attacks.
Right. And it's hard because it's like investing in safety, right? You don't want to put the money into it because in case no one got hurt and you wasted all this money. Cybersecurity is exactly that, where it may or may not happen to you, but I think we're getting to the point where it will happen. And so, we invest pretty heavily in it. And the thing is you don't have to drop $100,000 right now to start. You just need to start, and then you need to amp that up year after year. Because with AI, a lot of our regular methods for protection are going to go away because AI can penetrate it.
Absolutely.
And so it's just a matter of continually investing more and more, and it's going to be necessary. And I know that makes it sound really scary when you're a small business, but in some ways a small business is almost easier to protect because it's only 4 computers or it's only a few items. So there's less people. I think one of the big things we invest in is a lot of training to keep talking about, how can we... if you're at a coffee shop, please don't be sitting there with your computer open. Use your VPN. Don't use other people's Wi-Fi, all these things. And we have to date never been penetrated, but people have tried. And we've had vendors penetrated, which was a big deal. I can share a recent story. We had an invoice that was coming due in, a week. But we were getting all these emails from the PM saying, hey, we need you to pay a little bit sooner. And we were like, wow, it's not really due until next week. And they're like, oh, by the way, we're changing our banking information. And my CFO was like, what was that PO number? Like, I just need you to verify who you are. They knew the PO number. They knew everything. And
because they had been inside of the vendor systems.
Yeah. So it wasn't just like they taken a good guess. They really were, what do you call it? You probably know the word, but they were basically copying their emails and sending it out as them.
Sure.
And she ended up setting up the payment a little early, and the banker called and said, hey, could you just check one more time, And so we called their accounts receivables, and their response was, oh, not again. So they already knew it was an issue.
Wow.
And I think it was like a $75,000. That would have been a lot for us.
You bet.
A lot for anybody. It wasn't us not being careful. It was somebody else. So now we have rules. If you want to change your banking information, we need to see you. We need to see you with ID. And you have to jump through a lot of hoops to change banking information with us.
Sure.
That's the other thing, is this iterative learning. We do this across the board, but especially in security. Every time we make even a little mistake, and even if nothing really bad happened, we do something so that it never happens again.
And do you share it with the team?
We do. And we actually have logs of lessons learned, and we try to even reference those as we move into new projects. Let's look at what logs might apply to what we're doing now. But yeah, we change things on a regular basis from everything that we've learned the hard way.
That's a great idea. I was just talking to our president here about some things, and when I look at some of the most fascinating leaders, they're doing some of the simplest things, right? That we had a speaker talking to us about how Ritz-Carlton does their behavior. They talk about the behaviors that make up their culture, and how they actually institute them every week. The same cultural behavior is talked about in every meeting across the globe, in all of their in every department, in every meeting. Sounds exceptionally simple, right? But the execution of it and keeping discipline on it, very difficult. Here you are doing something very simple, right? Which jumping onto lessons learned, exploring them, sharing them out with the rest of the organization. These things seem so simple, but I feel like we're all always looking into the business books, and we're looking for this next, strategy that's going to change the world. And it's these simple things that then we look at and we go, oh, I'm looking at you like you're the caveman creating fire for the first time, and it's just such a simple thing. What are some other simple things that you're doing that you're proud of like that?
Checklists. We do have checklists for almost every process in the company. And if we don't have one, I'm trying to figure out what that is and get a checklist in place. And then those checklists, I could go back through every one of them and tell you what mistake we made. So there's now that checklist item. And some newer people have objected to some of the checklists until I go in and say, hey, let me tell you about a day when, and we can go in and say, this is why this happened. So we're just making sure it never happens again. So that the checklist is our kind of tool for that. And we've used different tools to make that happen. But it does sound pretty hokey that it's just a checklist, but you just got to use it. And we audit the checklist to make sure that you followed it. Show me the evidence that you checked this box. Show me the evidence that you actually did it.
Now tell me, who keeps up on that for you?
Right now, it's my XO. We follow the military style, so he's kind of my deputy. So he it's sort of my passion project is to make sure that we're following these processes, and so he goes in and audits every month everybody's projects to make sure they're following the process.
Great.
So that one's a big one for us.
Yeah, because I think that's the toughest thing, is every good idea has to be followed up with good execution.
You're right, and that is a big challenge. We look at, we've followed a little bit of the EOS mindset. We're not like hardcore EOS, not that I have any objection to it, but we get something in place, but the method of making sure it stays in place, make sure it's still going. We set up a whole mentorship program. Now we're still doing the mentorship program 6 months from now. That's the hard part, I think.
You had told me, and this is going to kind of go back to that last discussion we just kind of got off of, which was the de-risking of things, the cybersecurity, things of that nature. But you had talked about leveraging a number of contractors. I'm not sure if contractors was the word, vendors, partners. Did you say 800? Different?
Oh, our approved vendor list right now is like about 400.
Okay, 400.
So when we got started, we were getting these. When our first big government contract was in R&D, and they would have us deliver this coupon of steel or arrange this testing or whatever. And so I had to go figure out where to get this stuff from or get it cut or whatever. And not just me, but my team had to do it. And so we ended up like just developing relationships with people everywhere. Rather than buying something to cut metal, I just had the guy down the street do it, you know? And a lot of those relationships have stuck from the very beginning. And so we realized that we do bring a little manufacturing in-house, but a lot we don't, because there's people all over Michigan that can do it for us. And so we really work on maintaining those relationships. It's becoming more complicated as we're under more scrutiny from the government than they have to be under more scrutiny. And not everybody wants to do that.
Right.
Or like as we move from we do a lot of R&D, but doing more production, it's a different type of approach. And so we've had to really grow like in quality, and because before in R&D quality wasn't such a priority. It was, you know, we were learning anyway, so if it wasn't perfect, it's okay. But now things have to be perfect.
Yeah.
But we do have a large vendor list. One of the things we always say is we don't go into any fight alone. And so we try to have a teaming partner or a group of subcontractors that are trusted. And we'll even entertain new relationships over time, maybe start with something small and grow them over time. But yeah, we try not to pretend that we can do everything.
How did you vet those people? Or like now I imagine that you've got some great sophistication going on there. But early on, okay, so you win a contract. You want to make sure that you deliver, you know, at the best level of quality. How do you vet that when you don't know R&D yourself? How did you learn? How did you learn how to vet those people? We
learned a lot. I walked through a lot of facilities. You know, I walked through so many manufacturing facilities, and eventually it becomes pretty clear what, you know, just because it's the cleanest place doesn't mean it's the most well organized, and just because it's pretty dirty doesn't mean they're not doing an amazing job. So you have to learn two of those things. But I always say, if the School of Hard Knocks gave out a degree, I would have one.
Yeah.
So we had to learn some hard lessons along the way, but you know, we look for things like quality systems. We look for, like, you know, are all your parts tagged? And, you know, we were learning pretty early, pretty fast what worked. And we have some people that they'll just ask. I can just ask them, you know, hey, if I'm going to go look at another company that's kind of similar to yours, what should I be looking for? And it's amazing. Entrepreneurs will tell you basically anything.
Yeah, they love to share.
I think people are afraid of them, but they will they'll bend over backwards to help you in most cases. And so I learned a lot from what people would tell me. My government customers would say, hey, so-and-so built this for us and it came out well. You might want to look at them. Some things we were getting was very specific to a company. We need this type of foam and it's only made by this supplier. So then I had to build a relationship with some of those companies because we needed to know if their foam was the right foam.
Got it.
You know? So
what were some of the harder lessons that you learned along the way? Did you have to do a lot of rework? Or what?
We did sometimes, yeah. Stop works are the hardest lessons when we've let something, you know, a manufacturer has committed to doing something and it turns out they can't do it. That is horrible. It's gut-wrenching to go in and just get your stuff and take it somewhere else. I know in automotive they do it and it's not that unusual, but in small business it's personal and it's hard. And we've had to do that a couple times, so I prefer never to do that again if we can help it, and which is why we have so much scrutiny now, and really trusting the team. But yeah, we've had to do some reworks. We've learned, like, I get POs signed on the checklist. We have to get once a PO goes out, it has to be signed, because I had a guy who was I call him teal pots. There was a typo, and we were delivering steel pots, but teal pots is the story, and I called him about a week before he should be delivering them, and he said, oh, I never got the PO. I was like, what? You know, and so I learned so many lessons like that. He found them in his spam, you know, and we worked it out, and it got delivered, but it was a real powerful lesson early on, something as little as the follow-up.
We use the example, or I use the example, and it's been proliferated through here, which is, you ever watch the news and you see the fire at the apartment building? Okay. They're still putting water on it the next morning. Yeah. Right. And the firemen are sitting around smoking cigarettes, pouring water on this hot ash, right? Because they don't want it to flame back up. And so with every single thing that you chase down, you have to make sure that flame is fully extinguished. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's why we have meetings where every time something happens, we have an after action review, and we all sit in a room and you kind of just have to admit what happened. and I try to be really big on, thank you for being transparent, and thank you for sharing what might not feel particularly comfortable in this moment, because without this, we couldn't grow and learn. And so, yeah, that's us putting water on the fire days later, is making sure that we don't do that again.
Yeah. Ask the extra question, learn from the mistakes. There was a book, Debrief to Win, by Cujo.
I haven't read that.
He was a Navy pilot, so you'd have to get over the fact that he was not in the right group as you. But
that was okay. Group. I used to fly with Marines in Iraq, so I have a special appreciation.
So he writes a book and has a kind of a program that talks about debrief to win, right? Debrief whether it went well or whether it went poorly. Mm-hmm. You have to debrief on every mission, everything that you've done, so that you can constantly get better. Yeah,
and sometimes you can't wait till it's done. If this project's going to take 6 months or a year or 4 years, we need to figure some stuff out before,
along the way.
Yeah, so that's been powerful for us too.
So a couple things I want to talk about before we wrap up. One is definitely your philanthropy work and the charitable organizations that you work with, and then the other is your where you think you're going with this company. Where do you want to take it? What does the exit look like at a certain point? Talk about those couple of things, and you pick the order, however you like.
I'd love to talk about the foundation.
Let's do it.
So when Brett was in the hospital, we was in the hospital for weeks at a time often, and so I would buy pajamas from the box store, and I would cut them up the sides, and I would sew snaps in them, and then we could snap them around his IVs, and then he could be in the hospital in pajamas. Because everybody agrees hospital gowns are horrible. And they are. Your tushy's hanging out, and everybody can see everything. And when you roll over, it's twisted. And so it was just this little thing I could do for my son while I could do nothing else to solve his problems. And so now we make pajamas for terminally and chronically ill children that we use Velcro now, but they're stretchy, and they're like comfy pajamas that they can wear in the hospital, and it accommodates their IVs and their trachs and their ports. And we'll even make you a special pair if there's some unique need that your son or daughter has that we don't already address. We have their tops and bottoms, so it's more like being so that's just kind of just a little like a way we remember our son. And I actually would like someday down the road maybe turn that into a full-fledged business where we supply hospitals these pajamas. But for now, we just want to be able to raise the money and give these away for kids. Do individuals contact you for the help? They sure can. Or we're partnering with like the Family Life in the hospitals, and they know their kids that are there a lot, and so the Family Life will have those pajamas for those kids that come in regularly. Wow. If a typically developing kid comes in because they broke a leg or whatever, they probably wouldn't be a recipient because it's just a blip in the map for them. But those that are there for the long term, they're really known in the hospitals. And, so that's what is the plan is to really build these relationships with the Family Life. And the way I envision it is the nurses are like, Brett's back in today. Let's get him a pair of pajamas. He'll probably be here for a couple weeks.
Yeah.
And so that's what we're doing with that. And we'd like to expand and grow that eventually. And so we have our foundation fundraiser in November 18th. And so maybe we could put that in the show notes.
Would love to.
And we don't actually take any money for it's right now. We don't. Everybody kind of does volunteer. Nobody or Mettle Ops pays the employees that help volunteer the time. So all the money goes into pajamas for kids. And we actually work with Getty's. Do you know Getty's t-shirts? They're awesome. They're an Easter market, but their t-shirts are the best. And so they do the pajamas for us. And they've been an amazing partner.
Yeah, you keep answering all my questions. I was going to say, so where do you make these? Who makes these for
Getty's? Anybody? Yeah. Anybody from Michigan that is shopped in the Easter market. There's these high quality t-shirts that they make. So they've been our partner on this for several years through all the different prototypes and iterations.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Is there one other charitable group that you do some work with?
There's been there was something else. Couple over the years. The one that I was on for quite a while was the Refuge for Nations, where we teach. We were facilitating teaching immigrant women technical skills like sewing skills so they could do industrial sewing. A lot of them come to the U.S. without any sort of money-making skill, and some of them they're limited by maybe their cultural or religious beliefs about working among men, and so we can provide training among women, or that they could then go in and work in an industrial sewing, or they could do it at home.
Oh, interesting.
But to do it, a lot of them already know how to sew, but to do it in an industrial and match the U.S. style and things like that. So we had an agreement, and they still have it. I just haven't been active with them with Wayne County Community College, and they go through that training for free, and they also get ESL classes and stuff. And then my other nonprofit that we sit on is there's no major professional ballet company in the area in Detroit. Not like so. Our oldest son is a ballet dancer, and he right now is dancing at the Texas Ballet Theater. He's 19.
Oh, wow.
And so we sit on a board where we're trying to bring in professional ballet and the arts to the local area and grow that.
Oh, interesting.
So that might be the other one.
Yep. My wife would like if you can help her get the Rockettes back to Michigan.
Okay.
If you can work on that.
I don't know what
they're
to
not
do.
ballet, but it's you did mention the arts. So okay, and so yeah, let's definitely make some notes of that. Make sure that people see that, and we'll help you promote that quite a bit.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. But we had talked about kind of the exit strategy, and I said, so you've got 8 kids.
Yeah.
One of them's got to want this thing when you're done, and you said, I don't know about that.
I don't know if they're old enough to make those decisions. My oldest is 19, and my youngest is 5. So I can, do you want mommy's business? Who knows what he'll say today. So what we've watched, though, we've had kind of a front row seat. I'm a member of several organizations where, like, I'm in Mich Business has a women and family business, and then I'm in a national organization with Women's Presidents Organization, and I've seen a lot of second generation businesses, and it's tough when siblings are involved. And so I have a lot of hesitation to pass the company down that way. I also do recognize that I have to die someday. So the company has to go somewhere. When
you deserve rest sometime after all this work. So
yeah. So we don't know what we're doing. We are keeping our options open, whether an ESOP makes sense or a sale makes sense. None of those things are in my near term. I am trying to learn about it because I really feel like to grow in business, I really need to understand. I need to understand PE and BC, and I need to understand what it might look like if we did an ESOP or we might do a sale. I have a friend. He's grown into a friend, and he has Parkinson's, and his health is failing, and he's 12 years into his Parkinson's diagnosis, and to see him struggle to keep his business afloat has been, he's a brilliant, brilliant man, and he's trying to just keep his business going. And in a way, I see it as a gift because I got to decide after seeing that, if some tragedy strikes my family, I'm going to sell immediately so that I can focus on whatever remaining time we have left or whatever I need to do. So, I do always want to keep that door open, even though I'm not necessarily in the minute ready to do that. We have a lot of growth plans. We would like to see ourselves. We'd like to get to 150 million in sales in the next couple years, and then we'd really like to push to 500 million in sales over time. And so I'm nowhere near those numbers yet.
Yeah,
so
but at your growth trajectory and what you've grown year over year, none of that is out of the question. So right.
So we have a lot of big goals. I like to be a little bit of a disruptor in the industry, and I see a lot of people talking about warfighters now, which I don't know that they talked about so much before. No. So I'm hoping that, we're influencing the landscape for the good,
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
One thing you talked about as it relates to PE was, you were talking about kind of the growth in your industry and, some of the changes that maybe the current administration has brought to light. Can you explain that one more time to me, and then for the first time to the others?
So right now, there's 2 kind of different ways for R&D for the government. The government either funds it, which is kind of ideal because they own it, or the company self-funds, and then they own it. And that's really difficult for small businesses to get in on that because the money has to come from somewhere.
Sure.
And the government, I think, has gotten pretty smart where they're like, well, how about BC's put the money in, and the government doesn't have to pay for it, and the big business or whomever doesn't necessarily retain all the IP, and it's less of a burden on the taxpayer dollar. Which, so from the taxpayer standpoint, this seems like a good idea. From how I've done business for 10 years, I am like,
You're right.
Okay, it's going to shift. So we're trying to understand how we fit into that. It's not been my model to take any venture capital or a PE capital.
Sure.
Would I be willing to change it? I want to make good business decisions, and if we come to that, I will. But I also really like the bootstrapping model. I feel pretty connected to that too. And then the conversation was, so what if we don't accept VC money? What if we are the VC? And I don't know too much about that either. Hence the reason I'm learning. And so we've got quite a few people surrounding us that do understand these things better so that we can figure out where we fit in the future landscape. We see the current administration not so focused on ground vehicles, which is really our bailiwick right now. And so that's the reason that we've expanded to Huntsville. And we've setting up, as of September 1st, we have our office there. So we can really expand into missile and space. Aviation has been my passion for many years. And so wouldn't it be great to do what we do for ground combat vehicles to do in aviation?
Yeah.
As well as the drones. And so Huntsville is really the epicenter in the U.S. for that. So we're really excited to kind of pivot and add. We don't think that our business will really be too impacted when the ground vehicle side, that's steady. We always have to have tanks, and we always have to have Bradleys and ground vehicles. But the new innovative things that are happening, we really want to be a front row seat on too.
Sure.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. You're making the investment to do that. Now, my fun little questions for you.
Oh.
Okay. So I really want to know what you would do differently today than what you did when you originally started Mettle Ops. So knowing what you know today, the brain of you today and all those experiences, what would you tell the younger version of yourself?
Well, okay, so I'm because we're expanding to Huntsville, and because Mark and I are leading that charge, we've packed up and we're going down to Huntsville.
Moving the family there?
Yeah, my kids are homeschooling so that we can transit back and forth, and we had to hire tutors, and we're making this happen.
I was going to say, how in the heck are you teaching
No,
this?
we have people helping us to make sure it's done well and done right. I am pro education, but I'm getting a chance to kind of start over anyway, And so I think I used to be one of the things, I think all of my challenges from the beginning were in my head and not necessarily real challenges. Like, oh, that person's real smart, or, oh, you probably shouldn't talk to them, and I've learned that that's silly. They're all people. And a lot of people who seem pretty intimidating, they just got a job there. That's it. They didn't start that place. They might even be pretty arrogant about it, but they just got hired there. And I started my thing, So I think that has been my biggest obstacle is, what I was making people out to be thinking in my head. I realized it's not a thing anymore. And people are people, and people actually, by and large, I think want to help. And so if you're willing to ask questions and be vulnerable in that, people are amazing how much they'll tell you. And I did leverage that a lot before, but we're doing that even more now. I mean, with Huntsville and the expansion down there, our day one is social and networking events. We got to get to know these people. We need to understand how business is done down here. We need to learn. Being a student of the industry, I think, has been a major key to our success. And the industry down there is done differently. So we're learning something new. So I think that's some of my advice. Some of my other advice, and we were just talking about this, I think Mel Robbins was saying this, is like, you have to just do stuff. Sitting back and not knowing what to do is not going to get you anywhere. And so I think that I learned to really hone that skill over time. That book, Eat That Frog?
Yeah.
That book was pretty meaningful to me early on in this journey. And so I'm pretty good at that. Like, what is the biggest, hairiest, ugliest frog I got to eat today? I'm doing that right now. And so
I think so. Mel, I wrote this down because we were talking about it before we started. Was start before you're ready, right? Just begin, right? Is what she says.
Yeah.
And so eat the frog, do the hard thing first, right? Go attack that. Go punch the biggest guy in the jail
Yeah, and for me, it was
Gym.
more like hold your head up high and get in there, you know? I remember sitting at a table and, it was a big conference room table. It was like kind of a small industry a day, and I sat in the corner. And like now, I would tell my younger self, just go sit at the table.
Right.
People will take you seriously if you take your own self seriously.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And,
I think also just also asking for help and just being brutally honest.
yeah.
Hey, I'm net new to this.
Yeah.
Right. I'm net new to Huntsville. Here's what I'm
Yeah.
trying to do.
But
Tell
don't be stupid for too long, because that's
Correct.
not okay
Oh, no,
either.
no. But be honest.
Yeah.
Right? Be honest all the way through. Right.
Mhm.
With hey, I'm net new here.
Yeah.
How can you help? How can you help me? People love to help.
I met a lady that I've known socially for a little while the other day, and I didn't realize that she was in private equity. So I reached out and said, hey, can I pick your brain about private equity? I know nothing about it. And she was happy to pour into me, and she wants to have another call,
That's
So,
great.
yeah, being
That's
bold,
great.
I think, is the big thing.
How has your faith helped you in life and business?
Oh, it is number one for us. And that is, it's funny. We worked out of the house when we first got started because I thought a Christian mom needed to be there with her kids every minute of every day. And I don't know that I think differently than that necessarily now, but it was really a big thing because I couldn't sacrifice the time with my kids to do the work. So we started in the front foyer of the house. Like there was like 5 of us in the foyer of the house, like basically in a room this size. And then we moved to the basement, and we got to the point where we had like 12 people coming to the house working because I was not going to leave
The neighbors
the
thought you were
house.
selling drugs or something.
Right. And like the postman was really mad because we couldn't get in the driveway. And because I was not going to leave that house. And we finally realized that I needed to do work outside of the house. So we got the building, and I didn't want to work at the building. I was going to work from home while everyone else worked at the building. And I went to the building, and I came home, and I was like, oh, kids, I'm so sorry I was gone. Did you miss me? And they were like, no. We were fine. So I had, I am a Christian, and it is the center of every decision we make, which I want people to know that it's possible to do that. And sometimes we have to make the expensive choice because it's about upholding our Christian values. I'm open with it at the office, and I tell people when we interview them, hey, I believe in Jesus. He's my Lord and Savior. I'm not going to be shy about it. But you also don't have to be a Christian to work here. But the way I see my faith playing out here is we treat each other with respect and dignity, and that you're a child of God and you matter to me. So that is a big thing for both my husband and I. And so we have a lot of people we work with that are Christians, and so we really try not to share. We have a statement of faith in our employee handbook so people understand where we're coming from. And again, they don't have to adhere to the same anything because I understand, we're all, I'm not going to put it on other people, but I don't hide who I am either.
Great. Great.
So we have a lot of kids too. And that's a big part of it. The kids, one of the kids was at the office today. I heard a little voice and I was like, oh, I think I have a child here. And one of the nannies, I had a teenager there doing some 3D printing and stuff like that because homeschooling, right?
Right.
And
home and office schooling.
Yeah. Well, and there's a lot to learn at the office,
You bet.
There's a lot of, there's engineering work going on all the time. So there's a lot of opportunity to learn, or not just that, do you want to learn some marketing? Do you want to learn accounting? We can teach you all of these things right here. But some of them aren't quite old enough for that. So when my 5-year-old was there though, we went to the drone room and we looked at all the drones and put together drones and stuff.
Very
so
cool.
that was very fun. But I really, my family is just the center of everything for me after my faith. And then comes the business. And that doesn't mean the business doesn't take a lot of my time. It does. And there's that constant balancing act between I am exhausted and now I'm going home to a whole nother role that I hold. So, and I don't, some people are like, oh, well, you're super mom. That's not the case. What I've done is I've been blessed with hiring the right people to help out. So my kids are not alone throughout the day. Not in a latchkey situation. There are our nannies and caregivers there with them almost all the time. And if I'm not, it would be rare that wouldn't be the case. And so, so it's just, I think the thing is there's unique ways to be a Christian woman and work. You don't have to, but you can. And I think a lot of people have some pretty strong opinions one way or another about that. And I think that we should probably just focus on what we're doing and not what all the other women in the world are doing.
Yeah.
Because I think it can be done well and look different for different women.
Oh, good for you.
Yeah.
You had mentioned, and I know we're going back into the business just a little bit.
Yeah.
You had mentioned, and what brought it up was the fact that the homeschooling and the kids playing with the things around the office. What are some of the new things that you're doing? I know you mentioned some water jets, some cutting tools, some 3D printing, things of that nature. What's kind of new and exciting for you guys on the tooling front?
Our current process, or our current bigger contract was with the XM30 office. The new XM30 is being designed by two large OEMs.
XM30 for us
It's the Bradley replacement. The Bradley vehicle is very old, and it's the replacement.
That's right. This is the one you said to us lay people, we would call it a tank.
Yeah, but it's not.
Right.
But anyway, so there's large OEMs doing that. But while they're doing that, their work needs to happen. They need to integrate software and hardware and understand what third-party things are going to go into this once the OEMs are done with the designs.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we're doing is designing just a test asset. And but it's a pretty complicated test asset. It's a fully slewing turret. And so that's really interesting because I was telling my manufacturer, I got a son that would really like to learn how to hook up those wire harnesses, And so it's pretty neat because the engineers are just so talented. They have so much long careers in ground vehicle design.
Mm-hmm.
And the way they work together, we will be building over the next couple months that test asset, and then we'll house it at the office where the government can come in and do their testing for software and hardware integrations.
Oh, great.
Yeah, and so then when the OEMs, whichever one gets down selected, when they roll out their XM30, a lot of decisions will be made ahead of time as far as what equipment will go on it, outside of what their expectations and requirements are.
Okay.
So that's I think it's a big privilege to be a part of that contract. It's
that's going to be fun for you.
Yeah. And then, the drone thing is kind of constantly changing. So we don't just do drones, but the motors is the big thing. And so they're brushless motors, which is it's a very basic motor. Engineers understand it, but they're wound really tight with copper wire, and the winders also come from overseas. So how do we do that? So then we have some young engineers figuring out how to do winders and how to insert these rare earth magnets and all these different things. It's really fun. We've had a pretty in-depth intern program for quite a long time now. We've had quite a few interns that started their freshman year, finished college, and are now full-time with us.
Oh, great.
And I feel like most of their education actually came from us, not actually college. But it's so fun to see them ideate and just be given the tools.
Yeah.
Like whether it's in the drones or whether it's with the motors or whether it's designing, a fully slewing turret with very senior engineers guiding them. It's like playing in a sandbox.
That's awesome.
And it's really fun. They're enthusiastic with what they're doing, and they have new ideas. I know as we get a little bit older, we kind of get stuck in the way it's always been, and so it's really neat to see that. And then we have some other projects where we were ruggedizing computer boxes and things like that. So we were talking about we can offer ruggedized boxes that we're making for drones. We can offer those for any scenario that holds electronics and things like that.
Yeah.
And so, nothing super. Well, the drones are pretty cool. Some of the other stuff though is very practical and useful. So, yeah.
Got it. Okay, this is going to be a surprise one. This will be the last thing we'll end on this. If you had to summarize your business journey in one word, what would it be?
Only at one word, like a compound word.
You can you have fun with it. You can play in the gray if you need to.
Oh, I wish I had come prepared with this one.
No, this is why this was.
That's why it's
surprise.
hard. Maybe eventful.
I like that.
There had never been a dull moment. I don't know if there's another one, but I feel like grit too is a big definer.
I have grit in my notes. I wrote it. I said you could be a Detroit Lioness. That was mine. So
I feel like grit is becoming very used.
I know, but I can't. I couldn't come up with more when we were talking about because it's not just resilience. Resilience might be it, but
resilience. Yeah.
I mean, you just keep plowing through. And
Yeah.
I think that's just what's so cool. And it's and like this eyes wide open sort of thing, like not afraid, just going after it.
Well, I would say there's fear.
Okay, there's fear, but what's the word I'm looking for then? You've got the opportunity or the abundance mindset, right? You're not letting any of the bad in your wake really bother you.
Well, this is like who entrepreneurs are, right? Obstacles come and they figure out how to get over them, around them, under them.
Yep.
When you hear people crying about how this change is going to destroy my business or whatever, I always pause and be like, are you an entrepreneur? Because most entrepreneurs are like, I'll figure that out, you know?
Yeah. It might not be comfortable, but I'm going to figure it out.
Yeah, never. I don't know that any day has been, so.
Well, and all of the, what did we say? We were prepping a little bit up when we were talking about the resilience piece and the doing all these things kind of just makes the hard a little bit
not
easier.
So hard.
The hard,
yeah.
not so hard
Yeah.
every time you've gone through it.
Yeah, and it's interesting with our kids because you see them do something hard and they get pretty beat down. And you're like, bud, it's not that hard. But for them it is. And so I think I really try to lean into this. Okay, but then you're going to get your butt back up and you're going to try again. And I think it's going to make them tough.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
All right. Well, you're doing it. You're staying tough. You're staying gritty. And
Okay.
I really appreciate you doing this with me and
Thank you.
and sharing your story with everybody.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right.
All right. Take care. This episode of the BLTNT podcast is sponsored by Auxium, business IT and cybersecurity designed to outsmart chaos. Empowered by Juniper Networks. Automate your network with Juniper Networks and the Mist AI platform, the world's first AI-driven wired and wireless network.